Funerals, something that most of us don't want to think about. Hopefully we don't have to spend a lot of time going to them, but as a minister you may be called upon to do that. One of the differences, well, there's lots of differences between weddings and funerals, is that funerals you don't really have much time. It's not like someone plans to die, so generally there's about a 3-day notice. Occasionally longer if they're getting cremated and it's a memorial service, but generally not a lot of notice. That's why we do have funeral ceremonies available online that you can download and have immediately, which is great. For a funeral that comes up fast, you want those words. I know the first time that I did a funeral, I had about 7 minutes of material. That was really shocking to me. I thought it looked like more than that on the paper, and I also just assumed that people would stand up and talk. Because if my loved one died, I would certainly want to say something as part of the testimonial, and I just assumed that that's what would happen. But you know what happens when you assume. In my case, I had a very short funeral. Don't assume that they will talk. If they do, that's great, but that's not something that you should assume. I always make sure that I have plenty of material just in case. There's chapel part, and then there's at the graveside. I have a little bit of separate material for the graveside, which is as they're being lowered in, usually something like the Lord's Prayer, ashes to ashes, etc. There's different parts to funerals, just like there are to weddings. One of the ways to find out what's the most appropriate thing to say is that you'll need to make a call to the bereaved ahead of time. Weddings, you usually meet the couple in person. I find funerals, a 15-minute conversation on the phone is plenty. The funeral home should give you some information about the deceased. So get all that information, and when you call the bereaved, ask them, say, so tell me a little bit about so-and-so. Likes, dislikes, do you have a funny story? Ask if they know of anyone who's planning to speak at the funeral. Just get whatever information you can. Lighthearted is good. I know it's funny, the stories that you get. I had one funeral I did where the family told me all about their loved one, Frederick, and I said, okay, Frederick, and it turns out everybody else called him Speedy. I found that out at the first time someone stood up and started talking about the testimonial. I was telling everyone all about, dear Frederick who had died, etc., and nobody was saying anything, and when the first person got up to give a testimonial, they said, well, Speedy was so-and-so, and and then I said, wow, I bet y'all thought you were at the wrong funeral, and everybody laughed. Apparently Speedy he's a fun guy, and everybody lightened up after that, and they told a lot of funny stories, but it was a little embarrassing. So make sure you find out if there are any nicknames or anything anyone else knows him by, the deceased. Ask for any stories, anything else. If not, we do provide a lot of material, including some Bible readings if that's what you're interested in, and there's some poetry and other kinds of things that you can insert if it seems appropriate. That's why you want to find out a little ahead of time to find out what kind of person they were. You want to be really careful to stay away from saying things like, time heals all wounds and any of those kinds of things. I do have some information. If you're a seminary student, it comes to you automatically, information about grieving and what to say and what not to say. I did a funeral for a couple who had twins and babies, and one of them died. And as I had said my part and someone was doing a testimonial, he stood up there and said, the one thing you absolutely don't say is, you still have another one. And I practically pushed him out of the way to jump in there and say, alrighty then, and move along with the rest of the funeral. I couldn't believe he was saying that. The parents were shell-shocked as it was. They really didn't need someone telling them, yeah, one died, but you've got another one. I mean, who wants to hear that? There is no replacement for losing someone. I'm sorry for your loss generally covers it. Funerals are shorter. They also have, there's graveside ones and then there's chapel ones. It's important to know ahead of time whether or not you will be going to the graveside along as well for the burial. Sometimes they do that, sometimes they don't, so it's good to know. When you get paid, it is called an honorarium. It's not a fee. I didn't know what the difference was at first, but that's what I was told by the funeral director. So funerals can be, it can be really life affirming if you let them be. Give people an opportunity to cry, give people an opportunity to laugh. You're there to be sad at the passing of somebody that they loved and help them to work through some of that grief with your service, as well as remember the things that were great and look at the joy that that person brought into their lives. And that's your job there. Also, your job is to keep your own emotions in check. People didn't come there to see you cry. They want to be able to have the space to cry themselves. Like a scary movie or a sad movie, you want to, they're sort of the audience. You want to be up there giving them space to feel how they want to feel. You're providing a great service. They're very interesting to do. Best way to go about getting business, I guess if you want to call it that, is to go talk to the funeral homes and the funeral directors. Let them know you're available. Give them pass out business cards, whatever. Otherwise, there's no way they're going to know that you do those things because it's the funeral directors that set up the funerals usually. Occasionally, people might find you through a website, but everyone that I've ever done has been offered to me from the funeral director. So again, if you have any other questions and it's not answered on the webpage, shoot me an email. Thanks.